Hey everyone, welcome back to the Insurance Lounge with me, Tanya.
And me, Kristy.
We are your local insurance agent here in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we are on a mission to make insurance less boring and more useful and something that you can actually feel confident about. So, our goal is to help you protect your family, your home, your business, and most certainly your future, all without making things overly complicated. So, Christy, what is our topic of discussion today?
So it's still February, maybe just barely, right? And Valentine's Day is a little bit in the rear view mirror, but we want to talk about those shiny, sparkly things that you might have gotten for Valentine's Day, even for Christmas a couple of months ago, right? Your
Yeah.
jewelry and collector's items. What does that actually mean? How do you cover it? When do you cover it? And is it worth covering it?
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, duh, Christy, that's why I have my homeowners policy for, or my
Right.
renters policy is for, right? Is to protect my stuff. So what are we talking about, right?
Yeah. And your homeowner's policy does cover most of your stuff, but when it comes to jewelry, firearms, watches, collectibles, items like that, furs, maybe, there are typically limits per item on those types of things in your typical homeowner's policy.
Yeah. So let's dive into that, Christy, and just to advise our listeners too, right? We talked a lot about this, guys. Have a copy of your homeowners or your renters policy, right? Or make sure your
Mhm.
agent touch on these things with you, especially if you have a lot of nice things and valuable things, or maybe heirloom things that you
Right. Even
inherited.
just sentimental value, right? That if it's going to make you sick to lose it, you might want to think about covering it separately.
Yeah, so that's a perfect transition into this. So when do we need to schedule something?
Yeah. Anytime you have a single item that's worth more than maybe $2,000 to $3,000, because the limit in a typical homeowner's policy is likely to be around $1,500 to $2,500, right, per single item. So if you got something that's worth more than that, if it would be emotionally devastating to lose it because it's an heirloom, like you say, something passed down through your family, it's difficult to replace because it's unique,
Mhm.
or something that leaves home very often, like your engagement ring that you probably wear every day, out and
Yeah.
about.
Or if you have a nice watch that you wear
Sure.
every day, or you wear it out on occasion more often than not. So more than likely, like it's not just sitting in a deposit box at the
Right.
bank, right? Or if you have a lot of high-end firearms, those things have special limits on them too, especially out here in our area. We have a
Most
lot of
people have
firearm
lots of
enthusiasts.
firearms.
Exactly. So you want to make sure, if you work hard for them and you spend a lot of your investment collecting these items, right? And even art, sculpture,
Sure.
paintings,
Hmm.
trading cards, things like that. Any
Yeah.
musical instrument sometimes, right?
I have a customer who has a collection worth of um, like retro board games that are covered.
Yeah, that's pretty
Go
neat.
figure. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, yeah. So if you don't want to spend your hard-earned savings to replace an item that you already spent a lot of money on and you really love, make sure you get it scheduled. Make sure you talk to your agent and get it scheduled
Yeah.
on your policy or some sort of insurance on it.
And so, how do you do that, right? What does that mean? What is the schedule?
Yeah.
And it's the easiest way to think about it is it's just a separate, typically policy, maybe even a rider to your
Hmm.
homeowner's policy, but a separate policy that specifically covers those valuable items.
Yeah.
Sometimes for no deductible or a separate deductible, at least from your homeowner's policy.
And
And they can provide coverage in a wide variety of situations and scenarios, right?
yeah, and you brought up a good point, Christy. So there's a few ways you can do it and a few places you can do it that as
Mm-hmm.
well, right? So let's say if you have a beautiful $9,000 engagement ring, there's so many ways you can go about that. You can attach it. And when we say schedule, guys, like that item has to literally be listed, right? It's specifically talk about that one item that you want to
Right.
insure for. So
With
that
a very
one.
specific description, right?
Absolutely. So, you can, it can stand alone by itself. You can certainly attach it to your home policy. We'll talk about the pros and
Do's and
cons of
don'ts, right?
that.
Yeah, yeah.
And you don't even have to purchase it from an insurance agent, right? Like some jeweler might offer that.
Sure.
Um, so now, if you are going to get it appraised, guys, so however you want to do it, right? Add it to your home policy, get the policy on its own policy, however you want to do it. But we can tell you that depending on the value of the items you're insuring, the
Mm-hmm.
majority of carriers will want some sort of sales receipt,
Some sort of
purchase
valuation of the
agreement.
property, right?
Yep. Or an appraisal, right? So if you bought something very recently, like maybe you guys got engaged over Valentine's Day, very recent, a sales receipt would suffice, would be efficient, right?
Right.
Um, but you can also send in an appraisal if you didn't have a receipt. Some jewelry store will do appraisal for you.
Mm-hmm.
And especially I want us to touch on jewelry really quick because I think that's a more common
Yeah, for
things
sure.
that we schedule or we insure. So with jewelry, there's two ways you want to approach it too, guys. So of course you want to insure your ring for what the value of the ring is. So, if your receipt is between, I don't know, 0 and 2, 3 years old, and you think that your diamond ring has not appraised that much in value, that's probably
Right.
fine.
Sure.
But I think Christy would agree with me that we do recommend that every few years you should get it appraised and get it updated and
Yeah.
get that appraisal to your insurance
Well,
agent.
I mean, look at, just the value of gold alone in the last, 5 years has changed drastically. So if you have a bill of sale that's 15 years old, that
Mm.
ring is probably worth a lot more today than it was then.
Right. And you want to think of it this way, right? So if you think, it will cost you $15,000 today to replace your ring, where maybe it only cost you 7,000 when you first bought it. I don't think you will be very happy. The insurance
Right.
policy will pay out whatever the value, the agreed value is on that item. But are you going to be happy with the value that you're insuring it for in case of a
Right.
loss?
Right.
All
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And that
Yeah.
and that's the specific value in scheduling the coverage is that you can get it insured for what it would cost you to replace it today based on that, like we've said, either the bill of
Evaluation.
sale, slash receipt, or
Mhm.
an appraisal.
Yeah. So what's the difference, Christy? Like, when you mentioned earlier that the most of the jewelry might be cover, right? Most of the specialty collectible items might be cover. Um, but when are they not cover? So let's talk about that really, really quick.
Well, right, right. If, say for an instance, a ring or a watch, if you are wearing that out and about, you're, on a boat or even just, walking around downtown and that thing falls off of your hand, that's probably, that's not a named peril on your or on your homeowner's insurance policy. So that's likely not to be covered just on your homeowner's policy, even for up to that $1,500 to $2,500 limit. Whereas if you have it scheduled as a specific item, either on a homeowner's policy or on a separate policy, then you're likely to be able to have coverage for something like that. So, fire, theft, those things that can happen to the item while you're at home, that's all well and good.
Right.
But I feel like, the things that might happen to jewelry oftentimes fall outside of those perils that happen to a home.
Exactly. And oftentimes you will see that on your homeowner's policy where the limit for these special items will drop down to that 1,500 to the 2,500 range that Christy was talking about. Typically, usually is due to theft. Now let's be
Mm-hmm.
honest, guy. Okay, in case of a fire and everything get burned up, yes, those things will be covered because it's caused by the fire. But how often do we lose all of our jewelry because of a fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of think of it that way. When you do schedule it, you might be getting a more comprehensive coverage
Sure.
on your valuable item than versus attaching it to your home policy or just having it, part of your personal belonging on your home policy.
Sure. Exactly.
So, so typically we see out there, right, Kristy, lower deductible or maybe $0 deductible a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times.
Mm-hmm.
The other part that is good when you scheduling it, or I'm sorry, when you insuring it, um, separately outside of your policy, what could it can also do is covering mysterious disappearance,
Mm-hmm. So
like
it
you
just fell
mentioned.
off, like you were,
Yeah,
yeah, like I was talking
right.
about.
It
I
might not
don't
be
know how
covered under
many
your home.
wedding rings of my dad's are at the bottom of the Chickamauga Lake, but as I understand the stories, several.
I'm sure your dad was not the only one.
He
Not
doesn't
the
wear
only
one
one.
anymore, for that because it
Yeah,
didn't have it insured properly. So,
absolutely. And guys, most of the time when you actually schedule the item, it will expand that coverage to worldwide,
worldwide, yeah.
right? So if you just got married and you're really proud and you want to wear your pretty rings around and you guys go on your honeymoon trip, you might want to make sure that that's protected.
Yeah, and be able to do that with confidence and security, knowing that it's protected. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
One of the things
So
we've touched on then is, do you attach that to your homeowner's policy or do you do that separately? Because I think there's some pros and cons to both approaches that we
yeah.
should maybe talk about with folks, right?
Yeah, let's start with attaching it to your homeowner's policy because I think that's probably one of the easier way to do it, right? You're
Sure.
gonna call your agent to talk about your home insurance.
Yeah. And you have the convenience of, probably bundled billing. It's convenient. You have one source, one carrier, and so on. Usually pretty inexpensive, even.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the cons of that could be really that any claim about your jewelry impacts the price of your overall homeowner's policy, which you might not want.
Yeah, and you might not want to do that either, especially you when you live in a regions like where we are, we have a lot of catastrophic weather events all the
Oh,
time, right? And so it's not unusual that you might have to use your homeowner's insurance for windstorm damage and things like that.
right.
But just know, guys, I think we covered this in the other episode, right? Of course, yes, you can use your insurance in case of a claim, of course. But keep in mind, if there are too many claims and too many little claims, you might be running out of the mulligans and you might find yourself in a very, very tough situation.
Yeah, yeah,
And I do want to address this too, it's because when we have that many claims in a short period of time, just think about that, right? It makes our household become a higher risk too.
right, right.
So
Yeah,
it might, we just don't want you to find out later after you learn that there's other ways that you can go about this without using up all your homeowner's claims mulligan that you might need to really save
sure,
for the
sure.
rainy, rainy day.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to consider too is for people with very high value collections,
Oh,
whether
yeah.
that's silver or jewelry or whatever it is, artwork, even like you talked about,
Hmm.
multiple, luxury type of pieces. Those types of things also might be maybe even less expensive and better off on a separate policy. So, like you said, just, things to consider and reasons to talk to an agent about what the best way to do this would be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And of course, Christy, if your agent can help you get a separate policy for your collectibles, then hey, you can file those claims, maybe have those $0 deductibles, and those claims, guys, do not go against your record in any way. It does not go
Right.
against your home claim history, which is a huge plus for you because that can impact your rate and your
Mhm.
renewal eligibility, right? And oftentimes, and I think Christy can tell you more about it too, is you will get more coverage with, and not so much the value, right, Christy, but like what cause of loss would be
Sure.
covered under the policy.
Right. Like you mentioned, the worldwide coverage, the mysterious disappearance, just, multiple causes that, beyond what the fire and, tornado or theft claims that can be covered on a homeowner's policy.
Yeah. And some policy, some separate policy, let's say jewelry, for example, can even cover like damage. So like let's say one of the
Sure.
stones fell out, right, Christy? That
Hmm.
happened to people. And
Or,
that
pair versus single type of coverage. You lose one earring, but not both of them. Well, you can't buy just one.
right.
So those policies might, pay to replace the set.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so I think that the biggest takeaway here, Christy, is almost I maybe I'm biased, but I am more leaning towards the separate kind of policy kind of camp. Just because I think uh we just have a lot of claims out here. So like we want to
Yeah,
make sure our customers save the claim for when they truly need it, when their home is damaged from a bad storm. But
exactly.
that's my take on that. What do you think, Christy?
And I tend to agree with you. Maybe, I mean, the one exception I think, like, if I look at my ring, it's not coming off my hand. I weigh a little bit more than I used to when I first got married and first put it on my finger. And I never take it off. I sleep in it. I literally never, ever take it off. So I
Mhm.
don't frankly worry so much about losing it away from home. It's really good. If my finger comes off, that's about the only way my ring is coming off. I'm totally honest. So
That's
I
right.
honestly just have mine insured on my homeowner's policy. But
Sure.
for different types of situations, I tend to agree with you that maybe a separate policy is better.
Yeah, and there's no right or wrong, guys. I think you just got to do what's best for your situation and what's best for your policy situation too. So I'll give us an example. I had somebody that have a $175,000 piece of art, right? And that's
Mhm.
one of the many pieces of art that we have scheduled on his homeowner's policy. So what we have to do, Christy, is as agent, our job is to help our customer think 3 steps ahead, right? Like if
Right,
something were to happen, if we were to go down this road, are you protected? Are you going to get enough of coverage that can make you whole again, right? Or is it going to put you
right.
in a bad situation? So in those situations, we not just scheduling the pieces of art, Christy, we also talked about in case of a fire and all the art burned down, but also all your furniture burned down and all your
Hmm.
clothing burned down
Hmm.
and beddings and everything you have in the home, you
Yeah,
want to make sure that your overall total personal property limit can cover your whole
all
household.
of that. Right. Yeah,
Yes,
it's a very
and
good point.
yep, and not because there's a lot of carrier that will only let you schedule a piece of jewelry under a certain amount, but it's still considered as part of the whole. So you
Right,
certainly don't want to be short if you're going to insure a big piece of luxury item with your homeowner's policy.
right. You're right. Yep, that's a
Yeah.
really good example.
So is it worth it to insure, Christy? What do you think?
I think yes. I mean, like we've said, the cost is typically pretty inexpensive. If a $12,000 ring costs $120 per year to insure, that's about $10 a month. That's less than the cost of lunch these days.
Yeah. And it has a
So,
$0 deductible,
and
right?
zero
It
dollar
covers.
deductible. Would you risk $12,000 for $10 a month? Probably not. So
Probably not.
I tend to think it's worth it, and typically these things also, just carry an amount of emotional value that's really incalculable. So, from that aspect alone, it's really worth it to me to insure them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in closing, guys, if you recently got engaged, if you inherited some jewelry, that can
Mhm.
happen a lot, right?
If
If
you have some stuff that you've had all your life, but you've never thought about it in this way,
Absolutely. Or you buy a really nice watch, right? That
Mhm.
happens very often,
Yeah,
very, very often. Yeah, so call your agent if you are thinking of, should I insure this? Should I make sure all my firearms are covered,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
All my nice jewelry, all my collections, my art. Uh, Call your agent. And if you don't have an
Absolutely.
agent,
We know who you can call.
absolutely. So if you find today's episode helpful, please like and follow. And if you know of somebody who might need the advice when it comes to their valuable belongings, then, please share.
Absolutely.
And so until next time, we'll see you then.
Bye bye.